Well, I wanted to record this conversation because uh, my dear sister Alex here and I always have these fascinating conversations around Kabbalah, around astrology, and how they weave together and tie together. And I made this connection a couple weeks ago that the intros that I have scheduled coming up about the Kabbalah, the intro workshops, organizing your mind, Kabbalistic keys to organizing your mind coming up next week, this month, in the month of June. And then in July, have balance your emotions on the tree of life in July. And I was consulting as we do with our peers and our friends. I said, "Hey, what do you think about these? How does it line up astrologically?" And like this, like, oh my gosh, these two sessions, these two introductory workshops line up with the astrology, don't they?
And you literally just asked the question. I didn't even have to say a word. And,
No.
and I remember you were like, oh my God, I just answered my own question.
Yep. Yep. And isn't that the Kabbalistic way? Ask the right questions and get the right answer.
Absolutely. And that's, what I find personally one of the beauties of Kabbalah. Without questions, there is no way to know more. It's only stagnation without questions.
Well, that's exactly it. So let me ask you this question, if you wouldn't mind helping me and helping perhaps those that are interested in Kabbalah and astrology understand why the connection between um, doing a workshop about organizing your mind in the month of June and then doing a workshop on your emotions in the month of July, why that ties to the zodiac.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as we speak right now, we are actually in Gemini season. And so when you first called me, to ask that question, we were, of course, in Gemini season. And astrologically, Gemini is governed over by the element of air, and it's actually the head of the what's called the airy triplicity, or the air signs. And so Gemini very much governs over the function of our brain, how we think, and how that translates into our everyday tasks and how we run our lives. Right. And so your first workshop, for the Kabbalistic keys to organizing your mind is absolutely essential because air itself is an element that can be a little bit chaotic. It actually in the Greek traditions, the very first air god was called Chaos.
Oh, well, look at that.
And so, having a tumultuous nature is very characteristic of our own minds. And so, having those keys to organizing the mind really brings a sense of peace and stillness, and really is a panacea, I would say, for the Gemini energies.
Hmm. Well, a couple things is that one, I've been hearing from a lot of people, and a lot of people are feeling this chaotic energy in the world, whether it's this upheaval energy or whether it has to do with, the sun being at its height. We have the summer solstice coming up very soon, so the sun is at its height, at its power. So it's illuminating all kinds of things that need clarity, things that need organizing. And, hands down, one of the key reasons I love Kabbalah so much, and one of the things that drew me to Kabbalah was because I saw how much it helped me with my mind. I've been a student of Kabbalah for 20 years, and immediately upon engaging with the Tree of Life, immediately upon studying the Kabbalah, going in the deeper, in these deeper teachings, my mind shifted. My mind's shifted, my clarity's shifted. All of that has become more productive, more creative, just clearer, more organized.
Yeah, in the 12 labors of Hercules, one of the tasks that Hercules is assigned is to clean the Augean stables.
Mm.
And the Augean stables were this massive set of stables with animals that never stopped doing their business,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hercules had to divert a river to run through the stables in order to keep them clean. Because if he went in there with a shovel, he would
It's not
never
enough.
finish.
You can't do it. And isn't that true of our minds? We can't just dig out the shit. Oop, I just swore. We can't just dig out the stuff.
Stuff.
We ha also have to bring in the light. We have to, that river of light, that constant flow of light,
Exactly.
but we need to clear out the stuff so that we can make room for the light. So it's a two-way street. And God, there's so many Kabbalistic layers into what you just said in that 10 seconds there, because of course we have the path of the flaming sword, which is that river of light that comes through
Yeah.
the tree of life, which is what we talk about and teach in the Kabbalah Ascension program. It's what we it's the pathway we follow up towards ascension. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's literally what I was thinking of was the path of the flaming sword.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And I know that you have your other
Hmm.
shop coming up in July and really restoring emotional balance, of
Hmm.
course, is very I guess we could say archetypal or typical of Cancer season.
Hmm.
And Cancer is the head of the watery triplicity or the water signs.
Hmm.
And Cancer, especially, really deals with the past. It is a
Hmm.
sign of nostalgia and the sign of our family foundations, because those are really what form the basis of our emotional natures, is the conditioning that we receive, from our family.
Hmm.
And so I really love that you're working with those Cancer energies, and bringing your second workshop in July, because everybody needs to address the things in their past. Without doing that, there is no moving forward.
Hmm. Exactly. Absolutely. And we talk about with Kabbalah and the way we teach the Kabbalah in the modern mystery school tradition, and how it is very much about number one, not being a victim of your past, not defaulting to your patterns, your mental patterns, your emotional patterns, which you were, maybe raised with, maybe, schooling, maybe religion, whatever it was that kind of created these default settings for yourself, which come from the past. We say, that's true. Yep, those things happened in that way. But guess what? That's not your truest blueprint. That's not exactly who you are as a divine being. So, who are you as a divine being? And let's peel back the layers from the past. Let's peel back the emotional hurt, the emotional pain, the trauma that really doesn't define who you are. But our
Yeah.
mind and our emotions has made us kind of define ourselves that way. It has made us tell ourselves a story, and we tell ourselves these stories, and these stories aren't true.
Well, it's interesting because when are you without thoughts or emotions? Rarely ever.
Hmm.
Right? You're always surrounded by them. So it's very easy to make the mistake of defining yourself by those thoughts and emotions. But those are things you think or feel. They actually don't define who you are.
Yeah.
And when I look at someone's chart, that gives me the foundation of understanding who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But astrological charts are something you are becoming.
Hmm.
They are something that you are becoming, that you are striving towards. And so, you and I have talked about this so many
Hmm.
times, but we could say that there are dimensions of expression within the astrological chart.
Hmm.
And when you have a lot of unresolved emotions,
Hmm.
unresolved traumas, or if you have thinking patterns that come from lower frequencies and misunderstandings, then you tend to express through the lower dimensions of the chart.
Yep.
And the trouble with that is that leaks into your relationships.
Hmm.
It shows up in your ability to manifest. It affects your physical, mental, emotional health as well. And what I really love about the Hermetic Ray Kabbalah that we study in the mystery school is that it has this beautiful alchemical component to it.
Mhm.
You're not just learning about the symbology of the tree of life. You are actually activating it within you. And it embarks, you embark on this process of distillation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as you go through the path of the flaming sword on the tree of life, you go through this distillation process, refining the spirit at each level.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's when you really get to discover who you are, not just what you think and what you feel.
Exactly. And exactly. And you realize where your thoughts and feelings have a place, and they do. And it is in the lower aspects of the tree, the lower, you could say connected to the lower self and the personality, which aren't inherently bad, but they are in the lower dimensions, right? And,
Yeah.
this concept that we are becoming, we are distilling ourselves, we're purifying ourselves so that we can be the best version of ourselves, and the tree of life being that blueprint for our divinity. And I love this tying it together with astrology because you say your chart is indicates and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but your chart indicates kind of aspects of yourself that you are becoming or growing into. Is that
Yes.
a way to say it? So I love
Yeah.
that because of course and all of us have a unique chart. All of us have a unique combination, right?
Yeah.
um but the symbol of the tree of life is a symbol that we all have within us, and within the symbol, the rungs on the tree of life, I often, to simplify, describe it as these circles and lines, right? So these circles, the Sephiroth, are these stages of consciousness and awareness that we are progressing through and ascending through, but also they correspond, each of them correspond to a planet. And so that is another layer of awareness of how does that planet show up for me in my chart, right? And
Yeah.
and I know, you've guided me so much with astrology, and I've learned so much about astrology through our conversations, and you doing chart readings for me over the years. And one of the things I love about your natal chart or your astrology chart is that it also shows you where you've come from. Like, it shows you the energies that, if we, before we came to this planet, before we took on our body, that we went shopping and decided, hey, what energies do I want in my life on this physical planet? And we choose, I want a little bit of Mars, I want a little bit of Jupiter, I want a little bit of Venus, however, whatever combination, right? And, you know, Sovereign Ipsissimus Dave, when he talks about Kabbalah, and how it fits into the lineage and how it fits into the path of initiation, one of the things he always says is how Kabbalah helps you to know where you are, to help you know where you are. And um, and I love to combine this with the idea that astrology and like maybe perhaps someone's chart helps you to know where you came from and to know the components of yourself. And then you combine that and you have this unique, you know, roadmap. You have this unique GPS system to help you navigate, knowing thyself, to help you navigate where do you want to go? Because whose decision is where you want to go? It's yours, it's ours,
Yeah. Absolutely.
you know. If I want to
Absolutely.
go to the top of the mountain, that's my choice. It's, or if whatever, however, wherever we want to go in life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you're talking about charts, and Christina, I can't tell you how many times, I've been doing a natal chart for someone, and they have a planet that perhaps is considered to be in detriment in their chart.
Hmm. Hmm.
Meaning that it has lessons associated with it.
Hmm.
So as I start speaking to them about how to understand and master the energies of this planet, they go, "Oh, is that why I had so much trouble with this sphere in Kabbalah?"
Oh my gosh, that's
I
amazing.
can't tell you how many times that, that's happened and they go, "Oh, well, okay, I feel a little bit better about that, about that experience now." Right? But
Yep.
you're absolutely right. Like we need to know where we came from and also where we're going.
Mm,
Those are part of our reference points when we
yep.
study Kabbalah. And those answers are so important for us to have some sense of stability in our lives
Yep.
also.
Yep.
And also to have gratitude for the growth that we have. Without recognizing where you came from, it's very hard to honor and acknowledge the growth and the healing that you've done. And it will always feel like there's so much more to be done.
Oh yeah.
And and so having those two reference points is such an incredible blessing and really gives you a great sense of scope and also dimension.
Hmm.
And like you said, where you're at.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, and in the Kabbalah, and the not in the in the full year ascension program where we ascend through the whole tree of life, we absolutely are able to then look, at the start in Malkuth, how did I start? How did I begin? What was going on for me here? And then what does my life look like now that I've moved through all these phases and stages? And how have I gotten clearer on my reference points? How have I gotten clearer on my goals? And what do I want? Um, and actually, before I forget, I want to ask you a question because we talked about the connection between, okay, a workshop, intro workshop on organizing the mind in the season of Gemini, talking about balancing emotions in the season of Cancer, but I'm actually starting the full year journey, which is a full zodiac year. I'm starting it in September in my favorite zodiac sign, Virgo.
Yay!
What do you make of that? What do you think about the fact that we're starting in Virgo?
Oh my gosh. Well, what I love about that is you're really starting your tree with the foundation of clarity and discernment.
Mm,
And from the space of being actually able to create space for yourself so that you can ask questions. Um, of course, everybody knows Virgo the Virgin, but that's one of many archetypes that Virgo is actually connected to. And one of my favorite archetypal depictions of Virgo is actually of Hermes heading into the cave to
mm,
receive divine knowledge. And so he enters into that space of quiet and no disruption, no stimulus, so that he can come to a place of stillness to
mm.
receive answers.
Oh.
And I love that you are starting that, in Virgo season, because you're starting with that foundation of being able to come to stillness
Mm,
and receive answers. It's so important to have that.
mm.
It's going to be really beautiful for everyone who's participating.
See, I love that. And here's me in my maybe some of my lower Virgo nature, just thinking of the um, Virgo season and being a Virgo and thinking about how Virgos are hard workers and they're studious and they're organized. And I think about September being the start of the school year and, we're digging into knowledge and of course that's a factor too, that it is the start of a new year, a new school year, and here we are embarking on a new study of the self. But I love that hermetic interpretation of Hermes going into the cave, because that's where we're going with Kabbalah. We're going inward. It's about, yes, there is knowledge in Kabbalah. There's a lot of esoteric and, deep metaphysical knowledge that comes from the ancient teachings of Kabbalah, but ultimately all of that is meant to guide you into knowledge of the self. That's all. That's why this path exists. That's why this lineage exists, is about knowing thyself, knowing thyself, and so that we can make the world a better place.
Yeah. And so that's why you do your astrology chart. That's why you do Kabbalah. so
Absolutely.
that you can know thyself.
Absolutely. And, then you bring in the powers of the tools of the lineage with activation, activating the DNA, activating that divine blueprint, initiation, 10 times more power. And if ascend more initiations, 10 times that, 10 times that, hundreds, thousands of times more access to light and the ability to live your purpose, to live the life you are meant to live, a life of joy, love, peace, and to bring that to the world to help
And
others.
that's exactly how you elevate the dimensions of your own chart.
Hmm.
So that the highest refined qualities and wisdom show through,
Yeah, I love
not only in who you are, but in everything you do and everything you touch.
Well, whether it's through Kabbalah, astrology, initiation,
Initiation.
activation, healing, all the tools of the lineage, this is what we want for everybody to know thyself, to, have a clear mind, to have a, you know, balance in their emotions and their expression of the self, and to know thyself. And there's lots of ways to do that. Kabbalah teaches that many, many methods, whether it's through knowledge, through astrology, through the herbs and the crystals and all the layers of who we are. There's many, many ways to get there. And
As a longtime student of Kabbalah, what I'll say to everyone is this.
mm,
If you're really ready to commit to a process of distillation
mhm,
and purity of the self, this is a must program.
mhm,
It really is.
mm,
And I really can't encourage everyone enough to attend and to find and extract that spiritual essence that comes out the other side, because it is the philosopher's stone that you will find on the other side.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for that gracious testimony to the power of Kabbalah. And, if I may reflect and share a testimony back to you about the level and the refined um, esoteric astrology and hermetic astrology that you are able to bring to people when you're reading charts and you're providing those teachings, whether it's in a class or in a chart reading, is that if you're really ready, if a person is really ready to know themselves and not just like, oh, I want to know about my, oh, pains and emotions, like, no, if you're really ready to like get get a real dose of reality of who I am and the energies that I came in on and what I need to do to shift. Astrology is a fantastic compass, and the way you guide people through it is amazing. And after, I mean, how much 22 years of knowing you, and 20 years on this path together. It's 20 years this year that we were initiated. Can you
Yeah,
believe
in April it was 20 years.
we were initiated in the same Empower Thyself class?
Yes, yes, I remember it was towards the end of Aries season in April.
Look at that.
I can't remember the exact date, but I remember it was Aries season towards the end of April.
I probably have the date somewhere. Um, so yeah, so after all this time together, this invaluable exchange has just been a beautiful way to express our growth, express our and share our experiences. So I'm eternally grateful. Thank you for having this conversation.
Oh, me too. This was so much fun.
We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely. We always do.
Bye.
Bye.